All right, morning. Today is Daf Vav and Daf Zayin and Maseches Yuma. As we go along through the Gemara, actually we have some of the Psukim from this week's Parsha. We'll see today. So we left off at the bottom of Hey Amud Beis. We had a machlokas. There was two different Psukim. One set of Psukim seemed to say that Moshe addressed Aaron with the Avnate. First Aaron, so, and then it says Osam, right? That he first he did Aaron, and then he did Ubanov, and then there's another pasuk which is Mashma that he did all of them together. So now the Gemara is going to ask each opinion how they dealt with the other one. So we left off at the bottom, 3 lines from the bottom of Hey Amud Beis. Aaron Ubanov bevas achas. So according to the opinion who holds that Moshe addressed Aaron and Bono b'vas achas v'oksiv. The pasuk says veichor osa b'avneit. They did it all together. Excuse me. According to the opinion who held that he did it together. Haksiv veichor oso b'avneit v'hadar ksiv veichor osa. I what about the psukim? The one that says first he put on for Aaron and then he put on his sons. So Gemara answers avneit. Turn the page. So he says veichor avneit. So amar l'cha. So it says on the top of the page, Avav and Aleph Hamilcha, Hahu Avneta shall Kohen Gadol, Lozu Avneta shall Kohen Hedyot. So it says no, there's a difference because it's coming to teach you something else. It's coming to teach you that the Avnate, the reason why I said it separately is to teach you that the Avnate, the belt worn by the Kohen Gadol when he goes into the Kodesh Kodashim of his special clothing, that was a different avnei, a different belt. That one was actually made of wool and linen. That one was a sort of a shatnez belt, right? That was different than that of the other kohanim. So that was according to that opinion. So that opinion says the avnei is different. Luman diomar, 2 lines on top of the Aaron v'achar kachbanov. One that says according to the opinion, first he dressed Aaron and then afterwards his sons. V'oksi, the pasuk says v'chagarto his son be'avneit. He dressed them all, including Aaron, all sounds like together. So, according to this opinion, held that the belt that was worn by the Kohen Gadol, right, when he wore his Shmona Begadim, was actually the same belt as worn by the regular Kohanim, right, which wasn't just linen, but was wool and linen. If that's the case, so why does it say he just Aaron, and then he dressed Aaron. So according to that opinion, it teaches us that there was the order that first he dressed Aaron, and then afterwards he dressed his banaf. The Gemara says, wait, just physically, how could you do them all simultaneously? So the Gemara says, no, he says no. That first he did, in other words, that he did it, the belt, and without doing any other begadim in between. In other words, yes, it's not physically possible to put on, 5 belts or 3 belts at the same time. Rather, he put on the belts together, meaning that there was no other begadim that were put on in between. Fine. We're around, 8 lines or so from 2 dots from the top. Back to what we said in the Mishnah. Mafrishin Kohen Gadol v'chulei. So we said it to the Kohen Gadol. We quarantine him. We put him in quarantine for 7 days prior to the avodah of Yom Kippurim. So Zak the Gemara Lama Frishin. So why is he separated? Why do you put him by himself? So Lama Frishin because the Kabrina. What do you mean? Like we said, we just we're in Daf Vav now. We just spent 5 blot discussing why he was put there. If it's according to Rabbi Yechanan, according to his source, i.e., his source was learned from the Miluim, and Reish Lakish, if it's according to Reish Lakish, according to his opinion, which he learned from Sinai, right? That Moshe Rabbeinu, right, was also 6 days before, and then we added the 7th day, so he was also said, he was quarantined for 7 days alone. So Hachi Kamar, this one means to say, Mi Beiso Lama Piresh. Why did he separate from his wife? Right, mi besa from his house means from his house, but also from his wife. Perhaps he'll come home and his wife will be a safek nida, and he'll have relations with her, and then perhaps from there he'll be tameh for a period of time. Right, we're going to get into this question. So Gemara says, first of all, atu b'rishai yaskinan. What we're doing with Rishayim, that the Kohen Gadol, his wife, he comes home, his wife is a safek nida. right? Unsure if she's a nida or not, and he's going to have relations with her. Are we dealing with Rishayim, right? The Kohen Gadol who's going to, Safek nida is Aser, right? So how can he have relations with her? So Elo Shema Yavo Ishto, perhaps he'll have relations with his wife for Timatze Safek nida, and then afterwards they'll find blood, and then the question is, did the blood occur before or occur after the bia, and therefore there'll be a Safek. So Amru Rabbanan Kamid Rav Chizda. So come on, who is this like? So this must be Kir Rabbi Akiva. This must be like the Rabbi Akiva. The Machlokes in the Maseches Nida. The Amar Nida Metames Bala. That according to them, that the Nida is Metame her Bala. In other words, he who lies with a Nida, right, is even a case of Suffolk, right? I would just see the Rashi here, right? Right. The Gemara will explain. So it says the Gemara with Tamei Sabola. In other words, he will become Tamei. Not only that, he'll become Tamei for 7 days, right? We know that Anida is Tamei for 7 days. So too, one who has relations with Anida has the same halachic status in terms of tuma, that he's also Tamei for 7 days. Why? Di Rabbanan, if it's the opinion of the Rabbanan who argue with Rabbi Kiva, Ha'amri, they say Anida Metames Bola, right? The Nida is not Metame her Bola. In other words, that perhaps he doesn't get 7 days. Perhaps he's only Tame for that day. And then later that evening, he would be Tahor. Because according to the Rabbanan, then, even if he was with his wife and she was a Safek Nida, he'd be okay by nightfall. So therefore, you wouldn't need 7 days from the Shas Bia, right? All you need is 1 day according to the Rabbanan. So you say, no. Amal Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda says, Afilu Tema Rabbanan. Even according to the Rabbanan, Ad Kan Liptik Rabbanan Led Rabbi Kiva Ella Be'achar Achar. Right, only after the period of time. In other words, that which the Machlokes in Rabbi Kiva and the Rabbanan is only in let's say a time period that it goes. Let's take for her to go right after the bia, to go ahead and notice, right, to leave the bed and go back, and then only later on she goes ahead and finds blood right on the sheets. That's called the acher be'acher. That's the machlokes. And as you find it later on, after a certain period of time, the machlokes are there as to how long the certain period of time is. But after that certain period of time, even according to Akiva, she finds out there was blood there. It's a suffix. It goes on Freya, and he's tummy for 7 days. But once achar, only the mamish was right after the tashmish. They noticed right after the relations there is blood there. So in that case, that's the machlokes. Right. In that case, even there's no machlokes in that case. In that case, even the Rabbanan would agree that blood was there. She was a nida during the relations, and therefore, even according to the Rabbanan, right, the person is considered to be tamei for 7 days. And Amar Rab Zera, so says Rab Zera, so Shma Mina Bel Nida Eino Kenida V'Tovel Bia. Now, another point, right? Let's learn from here. Right, that one who has relations with a nida is not like a nida, right? Why? The tovel biyom, right? And he's tovel biyom because in other words, what's their whole issue? The issue is he goes away 7 days. So he goes away on the 3rd of Tishrei. We're 2/3 of the way down on Vav Amud Aleph. So he Gimel Tishrei, which is a week before, so he leaves his wife sometime in the middle of the day, right? So if he had relations that day, okay. Now, he would be, right, and there was a suffix, it was a case of suffix nida, even according to the Rabbanan, if it was immediately after, so therefore it would potentially be metame him for 7 days. So he has to wait 7 days, which would come up to, right, the night of Yom Kippur, right, the night of Yom Kippur, which is the night of the 10th, right, the night of the 10th of Tishrei, is an Amos Tovel. So when would be Tovel? Belayla, right? So he would have to be Tovel at night, right? Because we know that a nida is tovel at night. So therefore, a bel nida, if he's the same, he'd be tovel at night. So how would he able to be performed avoda? He would require erev shemesh for the sun to go down at a time after he goes to the mikvah. So if he goes to the mikvah Yom Kippur night, he can't perform the avoda until when? Until erev shemesh, until the following nightfall. So he wouldn't be able to perform the avoda on Yud Tishrei, on Yom Kippur itself, because he would have to wait. Because since he's going to the mikvah at night like a nida, right, then he would not be able to perform the avoda until the following nightfall, which is already after Yom Kippurim. Elav, rather, what must you say? Shmamina, Baal Nida, and Kanida. Rather, let's learn from here that a one who is Baal Nida is not like a Nida. A Nida has to go to mikvah only after nightfall, after sunset. However, according to this, it must be that he doesn't have to wait till nightfall. He can go ahead, go to the mikvah on Erev Yom Kippur on the 9th of Tishrei, and then at nightfall, when it goes into from the 9th into the 10th, now he's already able to go ahead and perform the avodah. And Rav Shimon ben Hardi Amar, Afilu Tema Baal Nida Kanida, even if you say that really a Baal Nida, person who has relations with a Nida, has the same status as a Nida, that not only does he wait 7 days, but also he goes to the mikvah at night, just like a Nida. However, we say Kanida. He doesn't leave his home on the 3rd of Gimel Tishrei. Rather, he leaves his home right to moments before sunset on the 2nd of Tishrei. So therefore, the 2nd of Tishrei is included, and therefore, really, technically, the 9th of Tishrei, the night before Erev Yom Kippur, 24 hours before Yom Kippur, is really the time when he can go to the mikvah on that night to be tahor from 7 days of the Nida, right? And therefore, he'll be perfectly able to perform the avodah when it comes to Yom HaKippurim. So Meisvei, as your kasha, we're 7 lines from the bottom. Meisvei, kol chayvei tfilas b'yom. Anytime a person is obligated to go ahead and go to the mikvah, he is tayvel during the day. He goes to the mikvah during the day. However, nida v'yoledes, however, a nida and a woman who has given birth, who is now, right, is now time for her to become tahira and to go to the mikvah, tfilas b'layla. Right, there are tefillas at night. So what do you see from over here? Nida in Baal Nida lo. Right, we see over here clearly that it says that the Nida is the one who be tayvel mikvah, and a Baal Nida was Baal Nida. He does not have to. So therefore, you don't need to go ahead on the end of Beis Tishrei. Rather, he can wait till Gimel Tishrei, leave his home in Gimel Tishrei, and therefore, because it seems to be over here that so it seems over here that a Baal Nida can go to the mikvah during the day. So he doesn't need to wait till sunset Yom Kippur night. He can go in the morning or sometime during the day on Erev Yom Kippurim. So Gemara says, because it's listed differently, because it's only Nida and Yoledis. It's not listed, right? A Nida, Baal Nida, and Yoledis. The Gemara says, Nida, no, it says, that which it says Nida, v'chol da'asi mirabuya. It says, no, a Nida and anything comes from it. So in other words, the same category. It says Nida, it includes also Baal Nida. It's not a good proof. So maybe Baal Nida is just like a Nida. When it says Nida has to wait till night, so too is a person who has relations with a Nida. So now the Gemara asks another kasha. Meisvei balkeri kamaga sheretz. One who's a balkeri, person who has an emission, he is tamei for 1 day, just like a person is kamaga sheretz, a person who touches a dead sheretz. And a Baal Nida kitame mace. And a Baal Nida is like a person who is matame mace, right? A person who makes contact with a dead body. What's this halacha teaching you? So my lav l'tefila, is this not referring to tefillah? In other words, it's telling you that as to when you go ahead and be tovel. So it's telling you that you're tovel during the day. So therefore, we see clearly that you're tovel today. It's not an occurrence at night, and therefore, once again, he can separate from his wife on Gimel Tishrei during the day, and not the evening before, right before Shkia on base. So Gemara says, no, lo tumasan. No, over here it's talking to you about the amount of tuma. In other words, Balkari is 1 day, just like a Maga Sheretz is 1 day, and a Baal Nida is 7 days, just like a person who is Tamei Meis for 7 days. The Gemara says, Tumasan, Yitami is teaching you about the length of tuma. That's the Farish Pasuk, right? We learn high betuma shiva ksibe, high betuma shiva ksibe. It says by a person. Actually, we saw in this week's parsha, person's Baal Nida is 7 days, just like a person's matami tumas meis is for 7 days. So that it's not teach us that. That we know, but Farish, we don't need the Mishnah for that. Ella. Rather, when you say, turn the page, Vav Amud Beis El Lav, rather, where do you say, L'Tvilasan? Maybe it's telling you to the time of the Tvila, that just like a Tamei Meis, person goes to the mikvah during the day, so to a person's Baal Nida goes through the day. So the Gemara says, no, lo. Really, it's telling you the length of Tumasan. So and therefore it's defined. And therefore, so what's it coming to teach you? So Seifa is strictly, it's coming to teach you the Seifa, right? Ella, what does it say over in the Seifa? Shechamer menu Baal Nida shematami mishkav ma'ishav the tuma kala latami eichlin umashkin. Right? There's a special halacha, right? that even though that a person's Bel Nida is just like a person who comes in contact with a dead body, nevertheless, a person's Bel Nida is Matami Mishkav Moshav. In other words, if he's sitting on something, even if he's not making direct contact, right? And these, there's 10 mattresses, right? As the classic case, and he's not touching everything. Anything is on there, right? Becomes tame, which is tuma kala, the tame oichel mashkin. If there's any food or drink that is on any of these mattresses or anything, all those become tame from a person who is Baal Nida versus a person who touches a mace. So now that's what's coming to teach you. It's not teaching you anything else. And therefore, so maybe it's not talking at all about the time of tefillah. It could be that the Baal Nida still needs to go at night, and therefore maybe he has to go at the end of the second day of Tishrei. Rather, it's going to teach you another halacha when it comes to tuma, that in terms of the severity of the tuma, that a person's Baal Nida would be metami eichlan mashkin, even through mishkav and moshav. So Tashma, finally, one more case. Come and listen. The Tani Rebbe Chia, Hazav, the Hazava, Hamatzaira, Hamatzaras, Ubel Nida, the Tami Mace, all these people. A person who's a Zav, he's a seminal drip. A Zava, a woman who saw 3 days during her Ziva period. A person Mitzaira who's Tsaras, or a woman as Tsaras. A person who's Bel Nida and Tami Mace. Tilasan Biyan. It says of their Beferish, they go to the mikvah during the day, not at night, during the day. And Nida Violedes, Tilasan Balayla. And Anida and Yoledes go to the mikvah at night. Tiyufta, therefore, it's a clear kasha. Now we said before, not as a kasha, it's actually an answer, because we can say now it doesn't make a difference if the Kohen Gadol leaves right before. He doesn't have to leave the moment on still Beis Tishrei before sunset to get that extra day, and in order they can go to the mikvah at night, because he doesn't need to go to the mikvah at night. He can leave Gimel Tishrei. Therefore, he would have the 3rd of Tishrei, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. 9th of Tishrei is the 7th day. He can go to the mikvah during the 9th on Erev Yom Kippurim, and therefore be ready for the avoda, Ha'erev Shemesh, that evening, so he can perform the avoda, and therefore there is no shaila of tuma from being Baal Nida, even if that was a potential scenario. Fine. Now, okay, so we know he's in this room, right? There's, I think, Lishkas Perhedron, and people come. I guess they bring him stuff, food. They come, they teach in the halacha. So people are in and out. So why don't we separate it, just like we separated from his wife? Why don't we separate it from people? Because why aren't we scared that person will become tameh in there, right? Someone will die, and then there'll be tumas ohel, right? And he'll come to be tameh, right? Or tumas ohel, or make contact with the dead body, and therefore he'll be tameh for 7 days. Why aren't we worried about that, right? Someone comes in there and dies, and he touches the dead body on the 5th of Tishrei. All of a sudden, he's knocked out until the 12th. Why are we worried for that? So Amar Rav Tachlifa Avu de Rav Huna Mishmei de Rava Zos Ameres Tumas Hames Hutra Hi B'Tzibur. It must be that even though, despite the fact that he would make contact with a dead body, right? It must be there's a halacha that we know that when it comes to Tuma and Tahara, so we know that when it comes to the public, a Korban Sibur is learned out by the Korban Pesach, as Korban Sibur. In other cases, we see that if it's a public offering, then Tuma is not a factor. In other words, we say, you know what, even though he's Tameh, you can still, the fact that it's done for the tzibur, tzarech tzibur, overrides the fact. Now, there's 2 ways to look at it. There's hutra and dechuya, right? Hutra means it's mutter. There is no issue. It's lechatchila, right? Dechuya means, okay, but the evid is pushed off no other way, and therefore we'll allow it. So it must be by the fact that even if it becomes tameh, well, it's hutra, we can still perform the avoda. At no point will we ever push off the avoda if someone dies. Therefore, it must be it's hutra, not dechuya. And Ravina Omar, afilu tema tumas hames dechuyahi. Even if you say that tumas hames is dechuya but tzibur, nevertheless, tumaso hames leishchicha. And tumas beisa shchicha. Someone dying, going in there and dying is not common. Since it's not common, right? It's not common for a person to go in there and die, right, when he's in that room. Therefore, it's we're not chayshesh. We're not worried about that, right? We're not worried about aliens coming in and abducting him, right? We're not worried about people coming and dying in there, and therefore there's not a concern to say, okay, no one is ever allowed to go ahead and enter during these 7 days. Fine. Now, speaking of this machlekes, we're going to discuss this hutra or d'chuya. Itmar, tumas hameis, Rav Nachman Amar hutrahi b'tzibur, Rav Sheshes Amar d'chuya b'tzibur. Rav Nachman says it's hutra b'tzibur. There is no issue since it's b'tzibur. We don't take tuma into account. Obviously, it's best not to be tamei, but it's 100% l'chafchila if to perform it, even the tuma. And Rav Sheshes says d'chuya, right? It's not optimal. We prefer not, but if you need to do it, then you need to do it. So this is machlokes we're going to discuss basically for the next blast. So Rav Nachman says hutra. Let's just get the shitas. Rav Nachman says hutra b'tzibur, and Rav Sheshes says it's d'chuya hi b'tzibur. Now, hey chadika tmein v'tohirin by beisav. If they have now, remember each the kohanim were divided up into 24 different mishmaros. They would come in. Each one takes a week. Each week is divided to beisav, different families, and each family has a specific day. So in a case of the if they have, let's say, part of the people in this beisav, it's their day, it's Tuesday. Okay, some people are tamei, some people are tahor. So everyone agrees that let the Torah people do it. Now, let the Torah people do this carbon and not the Tamei people. Even though it's even the corner opinion who holds it's Hutra, let the Torah people do the Avodah. Keep ligi. When do they argue? The machlokes is whether, let's say, there's another tomorrow, right? So today is Tuesday, and everyone here is Tamei, right? So what's the machlokes? Do we say, hey, let's go get someone from Wednesday, they're tahor, let them do the avodah today? Rav Nachman says, since it's hutra, it's completely mutter, so therefore we don't have to go ahead and get tahor people from another beisav. Rav Sheshes Amar, no, it's only b'diavad. And therefore, B'tzibur, and therefore Mahadrinon, and therefore let's go ahead and get someone who's tahor, even though today's not his day, he's really supposed to do it tomorrow. Let's bring him in today to do it today to perform the avoda, so it's done b'tahara. And Ikadamri, and some say this machlokes afilu heichadika taharim v'tameim hayi beisav, right? Palig Rav Nachman. Some say even within this one beisav, if you have tahor and tamei, Rav Nachman, since he says hutra b'tzibur, even people who are tamei can go ahead and perform the avoda because it's hutra b'tzibur. Now, the Omer Avdi, and he says, let them do it, and he says, no, people do it, Nami Tamei. Even people who are Tamei can go ahead and perform the Avoda because it's Hutra Hi B'tzibur. Now, the Chol Tumas Meis B'tzibur Rachmana Shari, because any Tumas Meis, anytime the issue is whether someone is Matami Tumas Meis, whether you can perform the Avoda, that is mutter according to the Torah. Now, Omer Rav Sheshes. Says Rav Sheshes, top line and Zion Amud Aleph. This is today's daf. So Amar Rav Sheshes says Rav Sheshes, Mina Amin Allah. From where do I know? And Rav Sheshes, the opinion who held that it was D'chuya b'tzibur, right? So it says, Mina Amin Allah. How do I know that it's D'chuya b'tzibur? The Tani learned in Brisa. Haya Oimed umakriv minchas ha'omer v'nit meis biyado. A person was standing, he was offering the Omer on behalf of the tzibur. There's one Omer that's brought on the second day of Pesach, first day of Chol Moed Pesach. He's bringing the Omer, the barley offering, and it becomes Tamei. Omer, as he says, Mavin acheres tachteha. Okay, let's go ahead and bring another one in its place. V'im ein sham elahi. However, if there is no other possibility of Omer to be brought to B'tahara, we tell him to be quiet, or be smart, and just go ahead and perform the avoda because it's mutter. Now, Katani Mias, Omer v'ein acheres tachteha. Nevertheless, we say, what's their first response? Go bring another one, b'tahara. Why do you say that? It must be because we don't want to do it b'tuma, right? It's only like b'di'evet, but l'chadchila we should do it b'tahara. So it sounds like this is d'chuya hi b'tzibur, right? It seems to be a source for Rav Sheshes. Some Rav Nachman. So what would Rav Nachman say that? Madina heichad ika shirayim le'achila. This is different. This is not just a case of offering karbanos. Why is that? Because when you take a flour or the flour from barley offering in this case, right? You take you take a kamitza, right? You put some of it on the mizbeach. That part is burnt, and what's done with the rest of the flour? That's eaten by the kohanim. Now over here, it's tamei, so they can't be eaten. So even in this case, we prefer for it to be betahara, so it can be eaten, right? If it remains betuma, if there is no replacement, then even though the carbon is good, right? People can now go ahead and eat the new grains, the chodash. Nevertheless, this can't be eaten. It's not done in most, in the best manner. So that's the reason why, in this case, because it's going to be eaten afterwards, why we want a tahar offering. So therefore, Rav Nachman deflects and says, no, you can't ask me a kasha from a case that has shirayim, right, leftovers that are supposed to be eaten by the kohen. So Meisvei has another kasha. Similar case, there was a carbon seaver that was being brought. It was the mincha. It was the flour offerings that oftentimes accompany parim, bulls, eilim, right, rams and kvasim and sheep, and it becomes tamei. So Aimer, they say mevina cheres tachta, bring another one in its place. V'neim sham elahi, and if there is no other ones they brought that are tahor, he said, okay, just be smart and you can go ahead and offer it. Just don't make a big deal out of it. You can offer the tamei. It still works for the tzibur. So now, which karbanos are we talking about? My lav, parim, eilim, kvas in the chag. Are we not talking about these other musafin that are brought on sukkahs, right? Because on sukkahs it has bulls, rams, and kvasim, right, and the sheep, right? So is this not referring to that? And therefore, what's our first option? Our first option is go replace it. Go find one that's tahor. Mashma, right? That tuma really is a problem. We want to replace it with tahor, and if there's no other tahor, then b'diavad it's okay. Sounds like classic dechuya hibet tzibur. It's only dichuy. It's only like b'diavad. It's only pushed off if you can't find something else. But it's not lechatchila, because if it was lechatchila, we brought betuma, we'd say go ahead and offer it. We wouldn't say go ahead and find another option. So Rav Nachman, lo, we're not talking about the parim and kvasim and eilim of sukkahs. Rather, parim, we're talking about para of avodah zarah. When it says the bull offering, it was referring to a par of avodah zarah, and afagav the tzibur, and even though a bull offering of avodah zarah, right, which is brought on behalf of the tzibur, it's a tzibur who came in the l'kviyah zman mahadrina. The special halacha, that which we say that it's hutra b'tzibur, according to Rav Nachman, it's only if there's a timetable, right? We have to do it today. It's a holiday, right? It has to be brought today because today is Sukkot. It's a Sukkot korban, or it's a Pesach korban, or it's a Shavuos, or Yom Kippurim. Those are all have a set time. But when it comes to the par of avodah zarah, it can be brought today. It can be brought next week. It can be brought the week after. It can be brought any time. So let's not go ahead and we don't need to go ahead and rely on hutra b'tzibur, even according to Rav Nachman, because hutra b'tzibur only applies to karbanos that are kovei zman, that have to be done right now. But if it's not kovei zman, it doesn't have to be done right now. So what's the rush? Let's wait for something which is Torah and do it then. Only if it's kovei zman, then it's hutra b'tzibur. But otherwise, it's okay.
We're talking about a par helam dover b'tzibur, shel tzibur.
Yeah, what was that?
That we're talking about the par helam dover shel tzibur.
It's the power of the Zara, right, which was brought for avodah zarah, but I have the tzibur, which right, and that is an ola which requires nesachim. Correct, but therefore that doesn't have a timetable. And what was the case of Eilim? So the Eilim Sha'aron, the Isle of Aaron, the Afagad the Kvilei Zman, even though the Isle of Aaron on Yom Kippur is Kvilei Zman, it has to be brought on the 10th of Tishrei. Is a timestamp, so therefore it should be Hutra, and you don't need something else. Kevan the Yachidu Mahadrinan. Since it's technically a Korban Yachid, right? It's brought on behalf of Aaron, so the Kohen Gadol. So therefore, that's also considered, it's not necessarily considered to be Tzibur, right? Hutra but Tzibur, this is considered to be a Korban Yachid. So therefore, a Korban Yachid really should be brought b'tahara. And that would say, b'kvasim, b'keves haba ima omer. That's referring to the kvasim that are brought along with the omer on Pesach. Dika shirayim, that over there, since there are shirayim, lechatchila, we say we prefer it to be tahara. That's the reason why we go ahead and search out to find if we can see something which is b'tahara. Fine. So once again, Rav Nachman has saved himself, has deflected this one brisa, the three questions, the three types of animals, to say that hutra b'tzibur.
Are we saying that it's like an ola where nothing, and if nobody eats anything, then it's okay for the guy?
So if there's no shirayim, right? Then if it's no shirayim and it's not, it has to be a bunch of things. There's no shirayim, right? And it has to be b'tzibur, and it has to be kovei zman. If it has none of those three, then Rav Nachman would say you can offer it completely betuma. We don't even look for a second option. Meisvei asakasha. So it says dam shenitma v'zarko. If blood, right, it became tamei and was nevertheless done on mizbeach b'shoigeg hurtza. If it was done b'shoigeg, then it works accidentally, right? It works. However, b'mezid, if purposely they knew it was dam shenitma, they threw it b'mezid, lo hurtza, it doesn't work. So if it's done b'mezid, what do you mean? If you hold hutra b'tzibur, then it should be hurtza. It should be accepted and it should be no problem. So the answer is no. Kitanya yachid. That over there was not talking about a carbon tzibur, the blood where the blood became tamei. That was talking about a carbon yachid. So Toshma, come and listen. Amad tzitz meratze. What is the tzitz meratze? The tzitz was the plate that was worn upon the forehead of the Kohen Gadol. So what is the meratze? What does it allow to be acceptable, even when the tzitz is meratze? It allows karbanos which are normally should not be acceptable. It allows it to be acceptable. So what does the tzitz work for? Meratze al adam, v'al basar, v'al hachelev, shenitma, whether the blood, flesh, or chelev that became tamei, bein b'shoigeg, bein b'mezid, whether it was b'shoigeg or mezid, bein b'oines, bein b'ratzon, whether it was done accidentally or it was done against the will or it was purposely, bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur. Now it's whether it's yachid or tzibur. Now these if you hold up at tzibur that it's hutra b'tzibur, that something which is done performed on behalf of the tzibur can be brought betuma. Why do you need the tzitz? The tzitz shouldn't have to be meratza for that. It should be mutter on its own. You shouldn't have to rely on the tzitz to say, okay, this offering is okay because the tzitz was upon the forehead. That which says meratza is only going on the yachid, right? The yachid, but the tzibur, you're right. And Echanami does not need the tzitz to help it to be accepted because we hold it's hutra b'tzibur according to Rav Nachman. Maybe that was referring to one that was not kaveh zman. Maybe that was an offering; it was a tzibur offering. But like we mentioned before, let's say it was the paralam davar or one of the part that was brought for avodah zarah. So therefore, that part doesn't have kaveh zman; doesn't have to be brought on a specific date. You can wait for a later date, bring it to pitahara. Nevertheless, if the tzitz was on, it would be meratza and it would work. Fine. 4 lines from the bottom. Meisaveh. The Nasa Aaron is Avon Kadoshim HaKodshim. Right, so and Aaron will basically take care of. He will allow. He'll carry the Avon of the Kodshim. Now, even though something was brought improperly, but because of Aaron, right? He the tzitz will help that korban be mutter, be work. Now, which avon, which he talks about avon, doesn't say it specifically, which avon, which sin are we talking about that Aaron, the tzitz would help for? If you're talking about pigel, halacha pigel, right? Person offers a korban, but while it's being brought, right? They're thinking it's going to be consumed liachar zman. That's called pigel. So if it's that avon, which makes the korban bad, the pasuk says beferish leirotza. The pigel cannot be fixed with its tzitz, right? And if it's talking about avon noisar, now it was left over and it's too late. Once again, it should not be considered. It's not something that the tzitz works for. So what is this that we're talking about that Aaron with the tzitz can go ahead and fix, right? Right? Rather, it's referring to the avon of the Aveira of Tuma, Shehutra, right? It says that they're Averis, right? That Shutra B'chal B'tzibur, right? That is Hutra B'tzibur. So it says they're Averis, that's Hutra B'tzibur, right? The Kash of Sheshas. And it's a kasha on Rasheshis. So Rasheshis holds it's D'chuya b'tzibur.
Is this referring then to tumas to home?
No.
Unknown tuma.
It doesn't have to be tumas tom, right? It doesn't have to be unknown tuma. This is the tuma for the carbon, the carbon became tame for whatever part became tame, whether it was the flesh, the blood, or whatever it is, became tame, and nevertheless, right, that sits right is maratze, right, of tuma shehutra mechala b'tzibur, right, because over there it's in other words that it's hutra b'tzibur, right. It says over there, even without the tzitz, it's right, it's hutra b'tzibur, right. So I mean, Rashi's halashon yata he miyat iyata ma'itze she nice elav on carbon tuma, right? Umasha the shina the kula haylo masina the kala chashal the same the iser should be yafid hilkach shalilei nami the kula she had sitz maratze oisa the carbon yachik tanami, right? So it says it works on tuma because we see that since tuma is hutra b'tzibur, so therefore that tzitz will be maratze on tuma of a yachid, right? But the svara comes from the fact that it's hutra b'tzibur according to this brisa. So you see beferish that it's hutra b'tzibur. It's not an issue of being d'chuya b'tzibur, right? It's actually an issue of hutra b'tzibur. So the Gemara answers the kasha of sheshes. The Gemara answers no tonight. It's actually a machlekes tanaim. The tani liner brisa tzitz bein sheyesh al mitzchay bein she'ena al mitzchay meratz. It's actually a machlekes tanaim whether it's hutra b'tzibur or d'chuya b'tzibur. As it says in the brisa, that sits whether it's on the forehead or not of the kohen gadol, it's meratza. It helps for the karbanos to be accepted. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, if it's still on his forehead, then meratza. Then it is considered to be meratza. It does work. However, if he's not wearing his begadim that sits on it, then it does not go ahead and help any carbon that's tummy. It says Rabbi Shimon to Rabbi Huda, right? That when he goes inside the Kodesh HaGashim, that the tzitz is not upon his head, right? So therefore, right, you see that it's meratza even while it's not on his head. So you see clearly that it's not meratza when it is on his head, and therefore you don't need a proof. And Amar lo Rabbi Huda, so hinach l'kohen gadol b'yom kippur shetuma hutra lo b'tzibur, right? So it says Rabbi Huda says leave the kohen gadol out because tuma is hutra b'tzibur. Mechlal and Rabbi Huda is arguing Rabbi Shimon. Mechlal the Rabbi Shimon saver tuma d'chuya b'tzibur, right? You could infer from here that Rabbi Shimon holds that tuma is d'chuya he b'tzibur. And Amar Abaye says Abaye. If the tzitz is broken, everyone agrees that does not work. So kipligi. When do they argue? The tali besichta, right? Let's say when it's hanging up, it's not broken, but it's just not being worn. Rabbi Yehuda savar al meitzach v'nasa, right? Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's only while it's being worn. It says al meitzach v'nasa. And Rabbi Shimon savar no tamid l'ratzon lifnei Hashem. It says tamid l'ratzon lifnei Hashem. My tamid. What does it mean, tamid? If you're saying it's always on his head, do we find that he's always wearing the tzitz, right? Mila boy, he's in the bathroom, Mila boy mine, or you go to sleep. Obviously, it's not always on his head. So what does it mean? Tamid ela tamid maratzahu. Rather, it means even though it's despite the fact it's not always on his head because he has his own personal needs, nevertheless it's always maratza. Rabbi Huda nami haksiv tamid. According to Rabbi Huda, it says the word tamid. Right, so it sounds like always. Really, it was telling you is that he should not. He always be on his head. Tell me not that it's really it only works what's on his head, right? So what does Talmud mean? Talmud means that he shouldn't take his mind off the fact that he has tzitz, which says Kodesh Lashem upon his forehead, right? And Rabbi Rav Huna, like Rabbi Rav Huna Darshan, Rabbi Rav Huna, Chayiv Adam Mamish B'Tfilav. A person should always go ahead and move around this tefillin and make sure be aware that this tefillin is still there and constantly touching it. And how do we know that? Kavachaymer mitzitz, right? And that he learns as a kavachaymer from the tzitz. Why? Mad tzitz shein bo elas karachas. By the tzitz only mentions Shem Hashem once. Amar Torah, the Torah says Amitzchot Tamid. It should be upon his forehead. He should always be cognizant of that it's upon his forehead. He should not take his mind off it. It's a tefillin. But his tefillin, sheyesh baskaras harbe, that has Shem Hashem multiple times. Al chas kama kama. Certainly, chas kama kama. He should go ahead and make sure that his mind is upon his tefillin. All right, we'll stop here. It looks like 7:45. So people, I guess, if you're here or close enough, you can make the earlier minute at Kins. So tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, we will continue from here at 7:20. Shkoyach.
Shkoyach.